The seconds are out. The crowd is waiting. The boxers are getting ready to battle. Time for another edition of the Shoulder Roll Virtual Boxing Podcast with your presenter, Greg Rashid.
Well, I want to say swaddy krap to everyone out there, which means hello in Thai. If you're new to the program, I'm based in Bangkok, Thailand. I'm your presenter, Greg Rashid, and we're going to have another great show on the Shoulder Roll Virtual Boxing Podcast. What we do on here usually is that we do fantasy fights in boxing. We also talk about boxing news, and we also have a little music at the end. But sometimes, because it's my show, I have different subjects from time to time. And today, I am so honored and happy to have a dear friend of mine on to talk about her company. She's the founder of a company called Free Your Mind Productions. And it's good, it's good to take a break from all the boxing and all and to get into something else. And I'm just happy today to have on Odyssey Lane. And she's going to talk about her company, how she founded it, and what she's doing with young people as far as the aspect of mental illness. So we're going to have this interview right now with Odyssey Lane on the Shoulder Roll Virtual Boxing Podcast. And I'm so happy to have on today on my show the founder of a special organization has been doing a lot, has a lot of knowledge out there, and a longtime friend also, that I'm just so happy to have on here. Been wanting to have her on for a number of years, actually, but I'm just happy to have on. Who I'm talking about is Odyssey Lane, and she is the founder of Free Your Mind Productions. Odyssey, are you there?
Yes. Hi, Greg. It's a pleasure that you having me on and to talk about my wonderful production company.
It definitely is wonderful. That is it. And I want you to tell my listeners what it's all about. Now, I want to tell everyone that Odyssey just graduated from high school a couple of years ago, and I met her a long time ago when she was a baby. So
That's funny.
So she's the younger one of the group here right now. So.
Okay.
But tell her,
right.
Okay, go ahead, Odyssey.
Well, Free Your Mind Productions, it operates as a mission-driven creative publishing/media entity whose output includes children's books, stories, programs, and workshops. As a former nurse educator in a state mental institute, I saw that there was a statistic that was not being reported. It was underreported of children between the ages of 5 and 12 that were basically committing suicide.
Wow.
And it touched me so much. I said, I have to do something. And so what I came up with was to, start at an early age to talk about children's mental health and how do we reach these young children? Well, in studying, the best way to communicate children is really on their own level. And so what do children do? They tell stories.
Right.
So my aim, as far as the, my Free Your Mind production company, I came up with the Connection Library. So the Connection Library produces books that delivers emotionally meaningful storytelling, promoting mental wellness, reducing stigma, and empowering children's voices.
That's very powerful.
Yes.
That is very powerful. So tell us, go ahead, but tell us also, name a couple of the books and how, what you do to get children involved as they're reading these books.
Well, my first, I would say, flagship book is called The Vegetarian Fox. And The Vegetarian Fox basically was originally written by my 10-year-old daughter, who said, she says, Mom, when she was 10, she says, Mom, I'm gonna write you a story. I said, well, okay. And so she wrote a story about a fox who refused to eat meat. His friends made fun of him, and so he found companionship in a rabbit, and they became friends. And so I took her story. I was so, how can I say, surprised
Right.
and wanting to get her story out to other children. And so what I did was I took the theme and I made a story about being different, but accepting your difference and shining your light within yourself of
Right.
self-love.
Oh,
Mhm.
that's something. And as far as me being, and I'm a vegetarian, so I immediately can identify with that. I'm over 50 years of being one now, so I can identify with that, with that story. And but there are, but there are so many children out there who think, they just are afraid to talk about their differences. And that's why I'm glad that you have created the organization that you have created, because there's so many children that go, and went through that. All of us have gone through that, and I can understand that you're afraid to say, "Well, I'm a vegetarian, or I'm this, or I'm that," because you
Or
think
I'm
there's
different.
yeah, because there's stigma. You have to belong. You have to be the same or else.
And so yes, so the Connection Library's goals are to empower emotional intelligence. And I want to start with children the ages of 5. And that's when children start to socialize and they start to go out and build connections with other children. But sometimes children have a hard time. They're shy or anxious, develop anxiety, or they could be showing signs of loneliness. So what my book, or The Vegetarian Fox, it I want to build resilience and self-awareness through storytelling and guided learning. So we want to ensure children that have the tools to identify, understand, and regulate their emotions early in life.
And that's so great. Now, what do you say to some folks? Because I get this from time to time over the years now that, you know, children don't read books anymore. They just get on, they play video games. They don't read books. They don't, if they do read something, it's going to be something online on a tablet or a computer. So what do you say to folks like that?
Well, it's probably children they need a break in the
Right.
screen. That's what I say. They need a break from that digital screen. And what happens if parents intervene and read to their children, just maybe 20 minutes to a half an hour, read to their children so that their children's brain can start to develop, I would say, critical thinking skills. And this is what reading does for children. It has their brains thinking and looking at scenes and scenarios, which is so important that the computer screen it just won't give you. So it's really good to at least try to interact and read to your child at night, or find some kind of time that you can put aside and read with your child.
That's so important. And I always tell folks, I go to over here in Bangkok in Thailand, I go to a lot of book fairs over here. And it's amazing. They're always packed. And most of these book fairs, keep in mind, I'm in Thailand, are English books. And these places will be packed with young people, children, and teenagers
Mm-hmm.
buying books. And so when people tell me that, children don't really read any more books, I say, well, at least over here they're still doing it because everywhere I go, it's always packed. And I'm not talking about like a couple of 20 or so people at a book fair. I'm talking about thousands that come to these things.
Well,
And it's,
that's
go
good.
ahead.
That's good. It shows that that they have found I say the sunshine or excitement in reading
Right.
because it's just being able to be in one room and you can read a book and travel wherever you want. The imagination, that's what reading helps you to do. And so, um, you know, I know when I was a teenager, long time ago,
7 years ago.
I,
7 years ago.
right, right. Um, I really enjoyed reading, and it it just gives you such a fascination that I don't think that the computer screen, because I grew up without the internet,
Yeah.
and so I transitioned from having no internet to being in this world of global information, which is it's moving so rapid, but we have to take the time and we have to slow down and we have to have that, I would say, anchor of having a story read to you or even reading a story to, like I said, exercise your brain.
Definitely. And I, I want to tell my listeners too, I've been joking a little bit, but both Odyssey and I are graduates of the same high school. We graduated in the same class, 1972, of Roosevelt High School, Rough Riders, back in 1972. I can say that. And,
Right.
it's just amazing that and it's, we still have a connection all these many years.
Isn't that
And
something?
we're in our golden years, if you want to call it that, but we're doing activities. We're keeping active. And I want, because I had talked to you off air about this last week about it, but talk about why it's important. We're going to get back to the children to stay active as a senior. I mean, because you do a lot of stuff. And
Well,
I know you get a lot of criticism because I get it from time to time. Like, why don't you just take it easy? You're older now. What?
oh, I'm moving too fast for them to say that to
Oh yeah.
me.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, as I used to be, like I said, I'm a retired registered nurse, former nurse educator, and I've had over 30 years of education, interaction with students, teachers, and the community. And so after, I would say, being active in such an occupation, you really learn a lot. And I can truly wear the badge of being a professional nurse.
Right.
But when you retire, well, what do you do with all this knowledge? Do you just sit, and just let it go to waste? No. I said, I'm going to take my knowledge and my information, and I want to be able to continue to share it to those who are receptive
Right.
and give the knowledge, the understanding that I've learned and to share it. So this is what keeps me energized. When I can keep someone through my information, if I can keep someone or interested and I see that light bulb light up in that person's mind and say, you know what? I understand what you're saying. I get it. And I'm learning. That is what motivates me
That's
and
so
keeps me
great.
going.
That is
Yeah.
something. And doing it
Yeah.
with children, and having, doing it with children with the books. I mean, that really is It keeps you going. It's a motivator. It keeps you
It
going.
it is, and so I have a series. Even though the Vegetarian Fox is my flagship, um, I want to be able to touch on various topics of mental health that we don't like to talk about.
Right.
So the Vegetarian Fox is about loneliness,
Especially in the black community. Have to say that.
especially well with that stigma. It's we have to realize that mental health is a part of our total well-being.
Right.
You know, we have the physical, we have the spiritual, and we have the mental. And so we have to give attention to all three to have balance in our lives. And for some reason, people don't mind doing the physical. Sometimes, we get out, we're starting to exercise, and you see people out there on their bikes and running. And of course, um, we have the spiritual, people going to church. But for some reason, people shy away from that mental aspect or
Right.
part.
Right.
And we have to pay attention to our mental health. And so with my books, like I said, with the Vegetarian Fox is about loneliness and accepting yourself and loving yourself and shining that light within you. Then I have the Vegetarian Fox Goes to School, and this is where the Veggie Fox meets the bully. And who hasn't had a bully in their lives? Well, I don't want to give the whole thing away,
Yeah, don't do that.
but
Yeah.
but the Veggie Fox meets the bully. And then I have a book about anxiety. This book talks about recognizing what is an anxiety attack, but it's geared towards children in the middle school. And it's called Daquan Goes to Washington, D.C., where he's into his phone, loves his phone.
Uh-huh.
But what happens when they go on this school trip, he loses his phone and then he gets separated from his class, forcing him to use critical thinking.
Oh,
How you like that?
yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so um
Well, I'm
I'm
thinking as you
really
said that, I'm just thinking about, I've seen it, and I know you've seen this. I've seen not only children but adults sitting at a table at a restaurant, park, you name it. They're all together, but they're all on their phones and they're not talking.
and you know why? You know, I'm gonna give you a chance because I it's so widespread, and when I'm at restaurants, I see the exact same thing. But Greg, I want you to guess as to why you think that they all may be on their phones.
I think, with some children, they're playing games, but the main thing is, I don't think they know how to talk to each other, have a conversation.
They don't. And you hit the nail right on the head. And this is what happens. When your mind is isolated, and I use the word isolated because it's a term that when you're concentrating on that screen, you isolate yourself from everything else
Right.
except that screen. And so when you're on it all the time, and then you have to communicate with other people. It's like, well, what do I say to this person? You
They
know,
don't know.
they don't know.
They have no clue how to talk to each other. And and when you run into folks that actually, when you try to have a conversation with someone, you find out they've never really talked to anyone. They've never really just sat, talked and don't
That's
know
that's
what to say.
that's amazing to me, and again, I'm going to reference back to the time that we didn't have internet, and so we were more social.
Right.
We played games. We participate. participated more in intramural activities. We went out after school to play kickball or tag, or we interacted with each other. We did not have the internet
No,
to occupy our minds. And so now, it seems like we have a generation that they can only connect to this screen. And I'm going to say something, and I hope it doesn't upset people, but I want to take this opportunity. I get so upset when I see people give a baby a phone
oh
to
yeah,
occupy them.
oh
And
God,
um,
yeah,
this, when I see that, I say, you don't really know what you're doing to stifle this child as far as social. And this is how we get into this social mess when children reach 3, 4, and 5, and they're trying to go out in their classes or daycare or wherever they meet other children, and they don't know how to socialize.
no, they
And
don't.
then they get these symptoms of, unhealthy mental health. And the parents is like, well, how did my child get like this, and how do I reach my child? So
Yeah,
I think that this topic is so
it
important.
and it's kind of the same thing. But do you remember? This is like my last years in this, living in D.C. back in the late '80s, early '90s. That there were parents that would leave their children at Toys R Us because they don't want to really interact with them. Do you remember that phenomenon? And just let them
Uh,
be in there, and they would just go off somewhere. I mean, they'd go to a movie or go shopping or something, but they would not have their child with them.
well, yeah, but it's not only Toys R Us, it's like in grocery stores
Yep,
or
same thing. Yeah.
department stores, the children are running around and
But I'm talking about they're leaving, the parents have gone somewhere completely different and they're just leaving them.
I can't
It,
per se that I
yeah.
remember that, Greg.
And I remember there was an article I had to dig this up in the Washington Post about that because it was like this weird phenomenon that people were doing this.
Wow. Yeah. And I could only, say that it's because of a lack of knowing how to connect with your
Yeah,
own child
that's it. That's the thing.
and
That's it.
being frustrated.
Yeah.
And in order to be able to cope, that was the next best coping skill that they could pull up, and that's to remove themselves from that stressor.
And I'll give you even a worse one that I dealt with in Denver because I used to work with kids at risk. A lot of gang members and potential gang members I used to work with in the youth detention centers. They actually were prisons. I would do conflict management.
Hmm.
And honestly, I learned that there were some parents who would put their child, and usually it was a black male child, they would put them in the detention center over the weekends. Child hadn't done anything, but they didn't want to deal with them.
Mm.
And they would just put them in there as like a babysitter, put them in jail, in other words.
Well, I do remember, Greg, a program um, that was developed to assist children who were called, quote unquote, troubled.
Yeah.
And so, in order to keep the child out of jail in later life as a teenager, that they would put these children into the jails just to see what it was like. And this was a measure of a shock treatment.
Oh, you talking about Scared Straight? Those
Scared
programs?
straight.
Yeah,
Exactly. This was kind of like a shock treatment to children that if they spent a weekend in jail to see how it actually is and communicate with the inmates who can't go
right.
anywhere, that this would be a deterrent for them later on in life.
Uh,
Now, I don't remember following up with that success. I'm sure they have some data somewhere on how successful that was.
It was kind yeah, I actually saw some stuff in Denver. It was kind of mixed. The thing I'm talking about is just people who had no clue about, they weren't even doing Scared Straight. They were just like saying, okay, you can have my son this weekend because I got to go do something.
Mm,
And the kid
mm,
is, and I found that out because there were a number of kids, we would look at their records, the group I was, that I was supervising, we would look at the records, the backgrounds, and a lot of these kids had not done anything. The parent, I would talk to someone that was with the detention center with the DOC, and they say, yeah, you have parents that will actually put their child in here over the weekend because they're too busy, they're traveling or something, and they just
mm.
think it's safe to be in here, which it
Well,
definitely isn't.
I hope that is not being permitted nowadays
I hope
because
not. I hope
I
not.
think that um, I don't think that it probably worked too well.
No,
Um, you know,
because this was the mid 90s. I did this up until 2001. So it was like 90, 90s to 2001. I was aware of that and I dealt
mhm,
with that. But that's a show in itself. But
right.
getting
It
back,
is.
yeah, 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 we're going to get you back on here again to talk about
Right.
some other issues. But getting back to what you're doing, what has, as far as the reaction folks have had with the books and what you're doing, what has been the reaction thus far?
Oh my goodness. I have had such an overwhelming um, exception of the book. And because the people that read the book, they immediately want to buy it. And it's just been one constant statement. This is a good book. You're doing good with starting this conversation of mental wellness with children, and it's much needed. So I know that I'm on the right track because I've had such an overwhelming um, rating, I would say,
Great.
of this book. And I'd like to be able to tell people how to get my book.
Definitely.
And yes, yes. And so my again, my company's name is Free Your Mind Productions. And please check out my website, which is www.freeyourmindprod.com. Again, www.freeyourmindprod.com. That gives you more information about the book, gives you more information about my series, and it tells a little bit about me. And also, it has avenue that you can order my book online.
That's
And
great.
I'd be happy for you to drop me a line and let me know what did you think about the show? What do you think about the um, connection library of reaching children at a young age instead of trying to be reactive when they're a teenager
Right.
and start to have diagnoses of mental illness such as depression, suicidal ideation. We want to be proactive and start way before any symptoms, or if there are symptoms, we want to be able to communicate with the child through storytelling and beautiful color illustrations and be able to ask the child, have you ever felt like this? And so we're able to reach this child early to be able to intervene and be proactive. So again, my website, www.freeyourmindprod.com. I'm Samaya Lane, and I would be happy to hear from you.
Thank you so much. That is so great. And also, you also speak too in public. I mean, if people want you just to speak on the issue, on this issue, you're
Yes,
available to do
well,
that. Yeah.
I'm available, yes, because again, I was a nurse educator for about 5, 6 years, and so I have. I love to teach. I love to give information, and I had a class teaching teenagers. So this was about maybe 10 years ago,
Uh-huh.
and you would be surprised how interested our teens are to learn about mental health, but nobody is talking to them about
Yeah.
it.
It's amazing. But
It's amazing.
we gotta definitely get you back on here again. One more time, give them the information where they can contact you.
You can contact me at info at freeyourmindprod.com. So prod is PROD. Again, I'm going to repeat info, INFO, at freeyourmindprod.com.
That's so great. So Odyssey, just thank you so much for coming on. We're just warming up with this conversation. We gotta get you back on here again. It might become a monthly thing. So keep that in mind. But thank you so much. You take care and just say hello to all the folks. I miss DC. Really miss the area, but I'm over here right now. But thank you so much, and we'll be talking later. Take care,
Well,
Odyssey.
Greg, thank you so much for having me and look forward to it.
All
Thank
right.
All right.
And I want to thank Odyssey again for coming on today. Really a great interview, and we're going to definitely have her on here. And I know some of you are like, where's the boxing? Well, if you've listened to me over the years, I do a little bit of everything on here besides boxing. And please, really check out Odyssey Lane's website there. Great information. And just to learn a little more about youth, the whole issue of mental health, because that's something that people really avoid. They don't want to talk about. But anyway, we're going to get into the subject about mental health, but in a different aspect as far as boxing. And this is something that's been going on, and it's very controversial right now. And Malcolm and Ella are going to talk about this issue. And it's about the Muhammad Ali Revival Act. And some people are for it, some are against it, but it's all about the issue of protecting the fighters. So let's hear that right now. Malcolm and Ella on the Shoulder Roll Virtual Boxing Podcast.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are really getting into a major fight brewing outside the ring. We're talking about the Muhammad Ali American Boxing Revival Act. It's H.R. 4624 in Congress. Highly controversial stuff.
It really is. This could fundamentally change professional boxing in the U.S., maybe more than anything in decades. And, the argument for it is that boxing needs something. Pay-per-view numbers aren't great. HBO, Showtime, they're gone.
Right. They completely left the sport.
Exactly. So you have this bipartisan push, Reps Brian Jack and Sharice David saying, look, we need to modernize things.
Modernize. Okay, but whenever you hear that word, especially with something like the Ali Act, there's going to be pushback. Because this isn't starting from scratch. It's amending existing laws, right? The 96 Safety Act are the big one, the 2000 Muhammad Ali Boxing Reform Act.
That's the one, the Ali Act.
So our mission today is to unpack what that original act did, what this new bill actually proposes, and why so many people are calling it the UFC model for boxing.
Yeah, exactly. And to get that, you really need to go back to why the original Ali Act was created in 2000. It wasn't just, a minor tweak. Congress stepped in because boxing was rife with problems. Exploitation, rig rankings, promoters holding all the cards, coercive contracts. It was bad.
So the original act was basically fighter protection, a shield against those kinds of abuses.
Pretty much. It tried to build a firewall. Two main things stand out. First, separating roles. A promoter could not also be a manager. Simple as that.
Makes sense. You can't have the person paying you also be the person supposedly negotiating for you.
Conflict of interest, right?
Absolutely. Huge conflict. And the second protection was arguably even more important.
Which was?
Financial transparency. Promoters had to open their books before every single event. They had to disclose all the revenue, tickets, TV money, foreign rights, sponsorships, everything.
Okay, so the fighters and their teams could actually see how much money the event was making before they signed the contract or agreed the final purse. Precisely. And that transparency, that knowledge, is power in a negotiation. It's the fighter's leverage.
And that led to what kind of split, typically?
Because of that rule, the standard split in boxing became pretty astonishing. Around 80% of the event's economics went to the boxer, 20% to the promoter.
80%. Wow. That's huge compared to other sports.
It really is. But, and this is the big but leading us to today's bill, despite having those protections on paper, the original Ali Act often got called, well, toothless.
Toothless. How can a federal law be toothless?
Enforcement. It was basically left up to individual state attorneys general, and frankly, many just didn't pursue cases. So you had this great idea, this protection, but without consistent enforcement.
It didn't always work in practice.
Okay.
So that brings us to the Revival Act, H.R. 4624. The idea here is, okay, the old system is leaky, maybe unenforceable, so let's create something new alongside it.
Exactly. And that new thing is the Unified Boxing Organization, the UBO. That's the core mechanism here.
Right, the UBO.
And the people backing this, like Lonnie Ali, Muhammad Ali's widow, they really focus on the benefits, the carrot side of this. They argue it creates a baseline, a floor for pay and safety that just isn't there for most fighters right now.
Okay, let's talk specifics. What are these promised benefits, starting with pay?
First up, minimum pay. A national minimum of $150 per round for every professional boxer. Which, sounds low maybe, but for club fighters who sometimes make next to nothing or even less than minimum wage in some places, it's a guaranteed income.
Okay, a definite step up for the entry level.
Yeah.
But the safety aspect seems to be the really big selling point.
It is. The bill sets a national minimum for health insurance. $25,000 cover for injuries during a fight. That alone is higher than what 43 states currently require. But the UBO structure adds another layer. If you sign with the UBO, the safety standards get much, much higher.
Higher how? What do UBOs have to provide?
Okay, so UBOs would need to give fighters comprehensive medical exams, including HIV and hepatitis tests, that's standard, but also triennial MRIs of the brain every 3 years. That's a big one.
MRIs every 3 years, okay.
What else?
More doctors ringside, 3 licensed physicians, plus the one already required, so 4 total, and 2 ambulances on site.
Wow.
And there's more. UBO boxers would get access to UBO-run training and rehab facilities. Plus, and this is quite significant, insurance for injuries that happen during training, not just in the actual bout.
Okay, so looking at that list, guaranteed minimum pay, higher insurance minimums nationally, and then these much stricter safety protocols, MRIs, extra doctors, training insurance.
Yeah.
If you're in a UBO. On the surface, that sounds like a massive improvement for fighter welfare, especially if the old system was toothless.
It absolutely sounds good on paper. And the pitch is that UBOs will exist alongside the current structure. More choice, more opportunity, right. But this is where the controversy explodes, because critics look at those requirements, especially the expensive ones like MRIs and extra doctors.
They see something else happening. They see a squeeze. They argue those higher costs, while sounding good for safety, are actually designed to push smaller independent promoters out of business. They just can't afford it.
So the costs create a barrier to entry, funneling fighters towards the bigger players who can afford it.
That's the argument. And critics point fingers directly at one specific player they believe is behind this push.
Let me guess. TKO Group.
You got it. TKO Group, parent company of UFC and WWE, often linked in boxing discussions with Saudi Arabia's Turki Al-Arshik and the Zuffa boxing venture. Detractors call this bill a naked attempt by TKO to basically take over boxing and install a UFC-style system.
Okay, how would the UBO structure let them do that? What's the mechanism of control?
It's because a UBO bypasses the existing chaotic system of multiple sanctioning bodies. The WBC, WBA, IBF, WBO alphabet soup. A UBO controls everything internally. Its own rankings, its own titles, its own matchmaking.
So total control. If you're a UBO, you decide who gets ranked, who fights for your belt, who gets the big opportunities.
Exactly. Instead of a fighter playing different promoters and sanctioning bodies off each other, they'd potentially be tied to one single entity controlling their whole career path within that UBO.
And the trade-off. We talked about the safety benefits. What do fighters potentially lose?
This is the absolute crux of the opposition. They lose the financial transparency. UBOs would not have to follow the financial disclosure rules of the original Ali Act. that requirement just gone.
Wait, hang on. So the rule that led to boxers getting, what was it, 80% of the revenue? That's out the window for UBOs.
That's precisely the concern. If a UBO doesn't have to show its books, how does a fighter negotiate their true worth? You're back in the dark about how much the event is actually generating.
So what kind of split are we talking about then, if we look at the UFC model as the comparison?
Well, historically, the estimates for UFC fighter pay as a percentage of revenue hover around 15 to 18%, maybe slightly more now sometimes, but in that ballpark.
15 to 18%, compared to 80.
It's a staggering difference. Think about a top fighter. That's potentially millions, maybe tens of millions, left on the table over a career because you can't see the real numbers.
So the argument is you get a guaranteed minimum pay floor, that $150 per round, and better safety.
Right, a higher floor.
But you lose the mechanism that allowed top fighters to reach that incredibly high ceiling.
Precisely. Legal experts are saying this lets the promoter, the UBO, basically act like a manager again, blurring those lines the original Ali Act tried to separate. It gives them all the leverage back. You know, former UFC champ Chris Cyborg has been vocal about this, saying the lack of Ali Act protections in MMA is what held down fighter pay and careers there for years.
And back to that squeeze idea. Those safety requirements, MRIs, extra doctors, ambulances, sounds good, but if only big outfits like TKO can afford them.
Then the small promoters die off. Critics say that's not an accident, it's the design. It consolidates the talent pool under the UBOs, under potentially TKO's Zuffa boxing. It creates the monopoly structure they want.
Man, this is dividing everyone, isn't it? Promoters, fighters, even the Ali family itself. What are the main reactions we're seeing?
It's really split. On the Pro-Revival Act side, you've got Lonnie Ali, as mentioned, and significantly, the Association of Boxing Commissions, the ABC. They're the umbrella group for many state regulators.
Why are the ABC supporting it?
They highlight the medical standards. They see it as a way to improve safety, prevent tragedies, a necessary step forward, in their view.
Okay, and on the other side, the opposition.
You have the establishment promoters, the ones who thrived under the current, albeit messy, system. Eddie Hearn of Matchroom, Oscar De La Hoya of Golden Boy, they're sounding the alarm. Hearn talks about losing transparency. De La Hoya was blunt, called the process shady, and worried TKO would just sign lots of fighters, quantity over quality, diluting the sport.
But the opposition isn't just promoters protecting their turf, right?
No, and this is maybe the most powerful pushback. Muhammad Ali's own daughter, Hana Ali, and his grandson, boxer Nico Ali Walsh, are publicly against it. They've said Ali himself would have stood for the fighters' individual rights, the protections in the original act, not for this kind of corporate consolidation.
Wow. And the politics around the ABC's endorsement? That seems pretty contentious, too.
Hugely contentious. Combat sports lawyer Eric McGracken pointed out something crucial. The ABC apparently endorsed this major bill without formally consulting its own member athletic commissioners across the states or the MMA Fighters Association. In fact, the MMA publicly called out the ABC, saying they didn't even consult their own Athletes' Voice Committee, the group literally set up to get fighter feedback.
So, the body representing state regulators endorsed a bill changing fighters' financial futures without talking to the Fighters Committee.
That's the allegation, and it's caused a lot of anger. It raises questions about whose interests are really being prioritized.
And despite all this controversy, the bill has momentum.
It does. The big move was in California. The California State Athletic Commission, CSA, voted 6-0 to support the bill. That was October 2025.
Why is California's vote so important for a federal bill?
Because California is huge in combat sports. Biggest market, lots of fighters, often leads the way on regulations and safety. When CSEC gives unanimous backing, even with opposition voiced during public comment, it sends a strong signal to Congress and D.C. that key state regulators are on board. It gives the bill serious political cover. So, yeah, to kind of boil it all down for you, the listener, boxers are being presented with a choice, or maybe a trade-off. On one hand, a guaranteed minimum pay, much better safety nets, especially for those starting out or at the lower levels, a solid floor. But the price for that floor might be giving up the transparency, the financial leverage, that 80% potential that lets stars reach astronomical ceilings. You trade a high ceiling for a higher floor.
And it feels like this is happening fast, maybe without everyone fully realizing the implications. Which leads to a final thought, really. When you see an organization like the Association of Boxing Commissions endorse such a massive change, reportedly without even consulting its own Athletes' Voice Committee, it makes you wonder, how can boxers in this case make sure their voices are actually heard before the rules that protect them, especially financially, get rewritten behind closed doors? It feels like a really critical, maybe short window for fighters to wake up and get involved.
Thank you so much, Malcolm and Ella, for that report. We're going to follow up on that because you got to protect the boxers, in all combat sports. There's too many leeches out there that are taking advantage of these folks, these men and women forever, not just in the 21st century, forever. And this got to change. It's got to change. But anyway, again, Malcolm and Ella, thank you for that report. And right now, we're going to have Jessica give us a little boxing history for the week. Take it away, Jessica.
This is Jessica, your martial arts champion with your boxing history for the week of October 26th through November 1st. October 26th, 1951, Joe Louis fought for the last time, losing to Rocky Marciano. October 27th, 1931, Panama Al Brown retained his world bantamweight title with a 15-round decision over Eugene Huat. October 28, 1927, the National Boxing Association, NBA, became the first sanctioning body to govern the sport. October 29, 1987, Thomas Hearns made history by becoming the first to win world titles at 4 different divisions, knocking out Juan Roldan in 4 rounds. October 30th, 1974, Muhammad Ali fought George Foreman in what many consider the greatest sporting event of the 20th century. October 31st, 1992, Lennox Lewis defeated Razor Ruddock to defend his Commonwealth heavyweight title. November 1st, 1922, Mickey Walker became world welterweight champion, defeating Jack Britton by a 15-round decision.
Thank you so much for that, Jessica. And I have to take exception with one little thing you put in there. Some people think that the Ali Foreman fight was the greatest event of the 20th century in boxing. I would actually say, I would argue, I'd beg to differ. I would say, as far as boxing, number one, in my humble opinion, would be the Jack Johnson-Jeffries fight in 1910. That, I think, was the biggest event of the 20th century, followed by, and I'm only talking about boxing, followed by, I would say, the second Joe Louis-Max Schmeling fight, followed by the first Ali-Frazier fight. So what do you think? What do you think about that? Then I would put the Foreman-Ali fight maybe 4th, maybe, but anyway, what do you think about that? But anyway, we're going to switch up right now, give you a little music here. This is Durian Funk, my group out here in Thailand, and they're going to talk about Awaken the Inner Tide. So let's hear that on the Shoulder Roll Virtual Boxing Podcast.
First whisper, where shadows dance like forgotten dreams. I sift through the haze of fleeting desires, chasing echoes of what the heart truly seeks. Rivers of thought carve canyons deep, washing away the gilded chains of want beneath the moon's hypnotic sway. I breathe the essence, pure and untamed. Awaken, awaken, let the spirit align, flow like the lotus in the still midnight rain. Awaken, awaken, surrender the fight in the groove of the soul. To life. the quiet pulse of eternity. See hypnotic waves that pet the edges of mind, dissolving the veils, revealing the core. In the sacred rhythm, we shed the disguise, embracing the vastness forevermore. Awaken, awaken, let the spirit line flow like the lotus in the still midnight rain. Awaken, awaken, surrender the fight in the groove of the soul. We rise into light. Let it bloom within. A light and a light. Let it bloom within. A light and a light. Let it bloom within. A light and a light. Now the garden within unfolds in grace. Petals of peace unfurl to the sun's gentle call. True needs like roots anchor the wandering grace. Superficial whispers fade, one and all. And in the trance of the breeze we merge with the whole, tranquil, awakening, eternal and free. Soul's quiet groove where the wild heart knows the divine harmony of you and me. Awaken, awaken, align, align, align. In the light we align.
All right, Deering Funk and Awaken the Inner Tide. Hope you enjoyed that on the Shoulder Roll Virtual Boxing Podcast. And like I always say, this is a boxing variety show. And we do a little bit of everything on here. And I forgot to mention before we get out of here, and you'll probably know the results, but I'm recording this on Saturday in Bangkok, and this is October the 25th. And there's a big fight in Britain, Joseph Parker versus Fabio Yardley. And that's going to be, whoever wins that fight will fight the champion, heavyweight champion, Alexander Usyk next. And I think Parker's going to win that. I really do, even though, I mean, Yardley can hit. I mean, he's something. He's undefeated, 18 knockouts and 20 fights, 20 fights. So he can hit. But Parker is overdue. He was champion, WBO champion. Almost, God, it's hard to believe, almost 10 years ago. And he wants to get back in there. And he is, he's been like stepped over and everything. And I think he really wants this fight. And he's gonna beat Yardley. And I think it's gonna be by knockout. And I'm gonna say in the 8th round. But let me know. We'll see next week when I come back on the show, and we'll talk more about that fight. But I hope you enjoyed the program today. We're happy to have Odyssey Lane on here to talk about her organization, Free Your Mind Productions. Go on that website, check it out. because we try to bring on a little bit of everyone on here. So, get the information out there. It's not just boxing. It's about a little bit of everything. And just want to get you a little education, as we say. But anyway, this is Greg Rashid. I want to say go in love and go in peace. Help someone along the way. Wherever you are on this big blue ball, whatever you do something to better the area you're in. Whatever community you're in, be it on farmland, a prefecture, in the inner city, wherever you are, do what you can. Help a young person, help a senior in need, help an animal in distress, pick up trash in the neighborhood, but do what you can. Don't wait for someone else to do it. Do it yourself and make it a better place. There are wars and rumors of wars going on out here, and we got to do something our own little way, our own teeny way to make where you are a peaceful, safer place. So do what you can. But again, this is Greg Rashid. Go in love and go in peace. And you can reach me on, a lot of people do, but you can reach me on Facebook or a little bit of everywhere. On X, you can find me on there if you want to talk, because a lot of people want to talk to me about various things besides boxing. So go in love and go in peace. See you next time on the Shoulder Roll Virtual Boxing Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Please become a member at patreon.com under the title Ringside Fantasy Fights and News. See you next time.